Chinese letter, Commander Talia Reeves. This court finds you guilty of gross misconduct and insubordination. Judge Harold Beckett's words cut through the military courtroom, sharp and final. Every head in the room turned. Every person held their breath. The harsh lights from above shone down on rows of crisp uniforms, reporters' badges, and family members clutching their seats. At the defense table, Commander Talia Reeves stood tall in her service whites, her shoulders back and her hands clasped behind her. The Medal of Honor on her chest gleamed as she took a slow, steady breath. Judge Beckett put on his reading glasses and calmly turned the page of his notes. His robes were perfectly ironed, his gray hair neatly combed, and his face looked like it was carved from stone. This was a man who had judged hundreds of cases and never lost a wink of sleep over any of them. He looked up from his papers and stared directly at Talia. "You are hereby ordered to surrender your Medal of Honor." The room erupted in quiet chaos. Gasps spread through the onlookers. A reporter in the third row fumbled with her pen. Two young officers in the back shared a look of shock. At the prosecutor's table, Colonel Wade Mercer stared at the documents in front of him, his jaw clenched. He refused to look at Talia. But Talia didn't move. She didn't blink. Not a single muscle in her face twitched to reveal the feelings hidden behind her calm brown eyes. With slow, deliberate movements, she reached up and unfastened the medal from around her neck. The ribbon slipped through her fingers. She stepped forward, her boots making no sound on the polished floor, and placed the Medal of Honor on the judge's bench. The soft clink of metal on wood felt louder than a shout. The medal's gold star briefly reflected light onto Beckett's face before settling. Talia stepped back, her hands once again clasped behind her. She did not wipe her eyes or bite her lip. She simply stood with perfect military posture, as if she had just finished a routine task instead of giving up her country's highest award. Near the exit, a man in a dark suit shifted his weight. Agent Grant Hale of the FBI had been standing there for 20 minutes, his arms crossed and his face neutral. Most people didn't see him, too caught up in the drama at the front. But Talia's eyes flickered toward him for a fraction of a second. Hale gave the slightest of nods in return, a movement so small it was almost invisible. Beckett didn't see it, Mercer didn't see it, but in the second row, Master Chief Leonard Donovan did. At 63 with 38 years in the service, Donovan had learned to see what others missed. He leaned forward, studying Talia's face, then the agent, then Talia again. His weathered face wrinkled in thought. Something wasn't right. A guilty officer being stripped of their honor should look angry or broken. Talia looked like neither. No, she looked controlled, completely and totally in control. Donovan had seen that look before on soldiers waiting for an air strike, on snipers about to take a shot, on commanders holding their ground in the middle of chaos. It was the look of someone following a plan. Beckett cleared his throat, pulling the room's attention back to him. The details of this case are undeniable. 2 years ago, on the night of March 7th, Commander Reeves took part in Operation Iron Dagger, a special ops mission in Eastern Europe. Her instructions were clear: maintain radio silence, stick to the extraction schedule, and do not engage the enemy unless absolutely necessary. He paused, letting the words sink in. She ignored every one of those orders. Her choices led to the deaths of 4 American service members, 4 men who trusted her and paid for her pride with their lives. Talia's expression remained unchanged. Her gaze was fixed on a point just over Beckett's shoulder, but if you look very closely, you could see a faint white scar on the inside of her left wrist, just peeking out from her uniform sleeve. When she shifted her weight, the fabric pulled back just enough to show the jagged line of an old wound. Shrapnel, maybe, or something else. Donovan saw it. He had his own scars from his time in deserts and jungles. He knew what a makeshift bomb's signature looked like. Commander Reeves's reckless behavior, Beckett went on, put the mission and every person involved at risk. Though she received this nation's highest award for her supposed bravery that night, this court finds her guilty of gross misconduct. She is a warning to us all, a lesson that bravery can never be an excuse for disobeying orders. A cautionary tale. The words hung in the air. Talia's fingers, still behind her back, tightened just a bit. Her jaw shifted slightly. She breathed in through her nose for 4 counts and out for 4 counts. It was a combat breathing technique used by special operators to stay calm. Donovan had taught that same method to countless recruits. He sat up a little straighter, his eyes narrowing. Beckett gathered his papers. This court is adjourned. Commander Reeves, you are dismissed from service, effective immediately. Your security clearance is revoked. You will be escorted from this building. He raised his gavel. Before it could fall, Talia spoke. Her voice was quiet but carried through the silent courtroom. Permission to speak, Your Honor. Beckett froze, gavel in the air, his eyes narrowing. "Commander, you have been found guilty. There's nothing more to say." "I only need 30 seconds. "Request denied." The gavel came down with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. Talia didn't move. She stood like a statue as the room began to empty. Journalists packed their things. Officers filed out, some shaking their heads, others whispering. The families of the fallen soldiers glared at her. One woman spat the word "murderer" before her husband led her away. Talia watched them all leave. She didn't apologize or defend herself. She just waited, breathing steadily. Colonel Mercer finally looked at her. He had avoided her gaze for the entire 2-hour trial, but now they were alone. Their eyes met across 10 feet of floor. They had served together for 6 years, run drills in the pouring rain, shared food in ruined buildings, and saved each other's lives in firefights. He had been there when she was promoted. She was the first person he called when his daughter was born. Now he was the first to look away. Talia's lips formed a thin line. She took a step toward him. "You were there, Wade," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You saw who ordered the attack." Mercer's hand shook as he stacked his papers. He didn't answer, just kept fussing with files that were already organized. "Wade." "I have nothing to say to you," his voice cracked. "You signed the official reports," Talia stated, her voice as flat and precise as a military report. "You erased the logs. You stood there and told the court that I acted alone." Mercer stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. He grabbed his things and walked toward a side exit without another word, his shoulders slumped as if carrying a great weight. Talia watched him go, and for the first time a flicker of emotion crossed her face. Not anger, not betrayal, but something like acceptance. Donovan stood and walked toward her. He stopped at the defense table and studied her face. "Are you going to appeal this, Commander?" His voice was rough from years of shouting over helicopters and explosions. "No, Master Chief." "Why not?" Talia glanced toward the back of the room where Agent Hale had been standing. The spot was empty now, but her eyes lingered there for a moment. "Because the truth finds its own way out." Donovan followed her gaze, and understanding slowly dawned on his face. He opened his mouth, then closed it and just nodded once. "Fair winds, Commander." "Fair winds, Master Chief." He left. Soon only Talia, a bailiff, and Judge Beckett were left. Beckett came down from the bench, his robes rustling. He walked to the defense table and stood before Talia. Up close, his eyes were a pale, icy blue. "You were a hero, Commander," he said softly, his gentle tone making the words feel even crueler. "The first female SEAL to get the Medal of Honor. Do you know how many young women joined up because of you? How many little girls had your picture on their wall?" He paused. "Now you're just a cautionary tale. In 10 years, no one will even remember your name." Talia held his gaze. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and steady. "I wore the honor you gave me, and I will wear the shame. But time has a way of fixing mistakes, Your Honor, even yours." Beckett's jaw tightened. For a split second, something like alarm flashed in his eyes, as if he realized he had just been warned. But his expression quickly returned to one of cool detachment. "You're dismissed, Commander, or I should say, Miss Reeves." He turned and walked to his chambers. Talia stood alone in the empty courtroom. The Medal of Honor lay on the judge's bench, its gold star shining. She stared at it for a long moment, then walked toward the main exit, her spine straight and her head held high. As she pushed open the doors, camera flashes exploded in her face. Reporters rushed forward, shouting questions. "Commander Reeves, do you regret what you did? Will you appeal? What do you say to the families of the soldiers who died?" Talia didn't answer. She walked straight through the crowd, which parted before her like water around a stone. Security guards tried to push the journalists back. Everyone wanted a picture of the fallen hero. She gave them nothing. No tears, no excuses, just forward motion and empty eyes. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright. A dark car pulled up to the curb and the back door opened. Talia got in without a second thought, as if she had been expecting it. The door closed, and the car merged into traffic and disappeared. 2 years earlier, during Operation Iron Dagger in Eastern Europe, the moon was hidden, creating the perfect cover for their mission. Talia kneeled in the shadow of a ruined concrete wall, the world before her a landscape of green and black through her night vision goggles. Her team of 8 elite operators was spread out around her. They had been moving through enemy territory for 3 days like ghosts. No one was supposed to know they were there. Their target was a compound 300 meters away, where high-value targets were reportedly meeting. The plan was simple: get in, confirm who was there, and get out. No fighting unless they had to. At 2300 hours, she signaled her team to move forward. They advanced in pairs, weapons ready. They reached the compound without being seen. Talia was about to give the signal to breach when her radio crackled. It wasn't her team's channel. It was a frequency she didn't recognize. A calm, professional American voice said, "Iron Dagger Elements, this is command. New target coordinates. Stand by." Talia froze. This was all wrong. Command never broke radio silence, and they never changed targets in the middle of an operation. She switched to her team channel and clicked her mic twice, the signal to hold position. The voice continued. Target location is now grid 748932115. You are cleared to fire. I repeat, you are cleared to fire. Talia punched the coordinates into her GPS. Her blood ran cold. The coordinates weren't for the compound. They pointed to a staging area 400 meters south, a spot where a friendly American unit was supposed to be waiting. She keyed her radio. "Command, this is Iron Dagger Actual. I need an authentication code." Silence, then, "Authentication is not required. This is a time-sensitive target. Execute now." Talia's grip tightened on her rifle. Her instincts screamed that this was wrong. She switched back to her team channel. "All elements hold your position. I repeat, do not advance." "Actual, what is happening?" Jackson, the youngest on her team, asked, his voice tense. "Stand by." The unknown voice returned, sharper now. "Iron Dagger Actual, you are ordered to engage the target at the given coordinates. Refusal to comply is insubordination." Talia pulled up the mission data on her tablet, her fingers flying. It took her 15 seconds to trace the signal. It wasn't coming from their forward base. It was coming from inside the United States, from a server at the Pentagon. Someone stateside was giving orders, someone who wanted her team to open fire on fellow American soldiers. "Negative, command. I need proper authentication before I engage any target." Her voice was like ice. "Commander Reeves, this is a direct order." "Then it can wait for proper verification." There was a pause. The voice came back, colder than before. "You are making a career-ending mistake." "Copy that." Talia switched channels and tried to contact the friendly unit. "Eagle 7, this is Iron Dagger Actual. Do you copy?" Static. "Eagle 7, respond." More static. She cursed and signaled her team. "On me, we're moving to the secondary objective." They left the compound and ran south. As they crested a small hill, Talia saw it, a convoy of 3 vehicles with about 20 American soldiers, and then the first mortar hit. The explosion tore through the lead vehicle, flipping it over in a ball of fire. Screams filled the night. A second mortar hit, then a third. Talia was already moving, sliding down the hill with her team right behind her. They reached the convoy as another explosion rocked the ground. Jackson laid down covering fire while Talia rushed to the first wounded soldier, a kid with half his arm gone. She applied a tourniquet as he screamed. The night turned into a blur of fire and blood. Talia moved from one wounded soldier to the next, stopping bleeding, marking the injured with chemical lights. Red for immediate, yellow for delayed, and black for those she couldn't save. She marked 4 black lights that night, 4 soldiers who would not be going home. The mortars stopped after 8 minutes. 2 vehicles were burning and the ground was a mess. Talia counted the survivors and coordinated a medical evacuation. It took 90 minutes to get everyone out. When the last helicopter was gone, she finally collapsed against a tree, her hands shaking, her uniform soaked in blood that wasn't hers. She checked the mission logs again. The orders had come from a Pentagon server, authenticated with a valid command key. Someone with high-level access had ordered the strike, and when she refused, they sent in the mortars themselves. Talia spent the next 6 hours saving everything, every transmission, every timestamp, every code. She copied it all to 3 separate encrypted drives and hid them. Then she tried to file her report. By morning, every digital trace of the illegal orders had been erased from the military's network. The official record said that Iron Dagger had completed its mission and provided aid to another unit. There was no mention of the mysterious orders or the Pentagon server. Colonel Mercer found her in the debriefing room. He slid a folder across the table. "They're calling you a hero, Talia. The Medal of Honor, the whole 9 yards." Talia stared at the folder. "Who erased the logs, Wade?" "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Mercer leaned forward, his voice a whisper. "Let it go. You saved 17 lives. Take the medal and the promotion. Just let it go." 4 men died because of an illegal order. 4 men died because of enemy action, Mercer said. That's the official story, and if you want to keep your career, that's what you'll say happened too. 3 months later, Talia stood in the White House as the president put the Medal of Honor around her neck. She smiled for the cameras and shook hands with generals and senators. And every night, she dreamed of 4 black chemical lights glowing in the dark. The sedan took Talia past the white headstones of Arlington National Cemetery. She sat with her eyes closed. 20 minutes later, they arrived at an underground parking garage. She followed the driver into a small conference room where Agent Grant Hale was waiting. He was in his 40s with a lean build and a suit that was professional but not flashy. He was all business. "How did it feel?" he asked. "How did what feel?" "Letting him win." Talia thought for a moment, like swallowing broken glass. Hale nodded. "Did Mercer fall for it?" "He thinks I'm done. They both do." "Good." Hale turned his laptop toward her. The screen showed a series of server logs. "We traced the command from Operation Iron Dagger. The key belongs to Harold Beckett. At the time, he was an Assistant Secretary of Defense with full access to everything." Talia leaned in. Why would he order a strike on his own men? "Money." Hale brought up another file. 3 weeks after the mission, the Pentagon gave a $700 million contract for new mortar systems to a company called Vanguard Defense Industries. Beckett was on the committee that approved it. He also owns 18,000 shares of their stock through a shell company. He staged an attack to sell weapons. "That's what we think, but we needed proof and Beckett wiped the servers clean." Hale paused. "But he made a mistake. He forgot about the backup system. Every classified transmission is copied to a secure, off-site location. It can't be accessed remotely." Talia felt her pulse speed up. "You got in." 2 hours ago with a federal warrant." Hale tapped the screen. "It's all here, the command codes, the timestamps, Beckett's key, everything we need." "And Mercer." Hale showed her another file. "Colonel Mercer signed the false reports. He also deleted your original testimony. We have his digital signature on the deletion logs. He knew everything." Talia sat back. For 2 years she had been called a liar, and now she finally had proof. "When are you arresting them?" she asked. "Tomorrow, we'll arrest Beckett during his next court session. We want it to be public to show that no one is above the law." Hale closed the laptop. "But this is going to get messy. They will come after you, try to discredit the investigation." "Let them." "Why didn't you fight back at the trial?" Hale asked. "You could have mentioned our investigation." Talia stood and walked to the window. "Because if I had, Beckett would have known something was up. He would have covered his tracks even better. I needed him to think he had one to get careless, and he did." "You sacrificed your reputation." "Reputations can be rebuilt," she said. "The dead stay dead." Hale nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think you're the bravest person I have ever met." "Save it for after the arrest," she said. They shook hands and Talia left. Tomorrow the truth would finally come out. The next morning, Talia sat in the back row of the same courtroom. The room was less crowded. Master Chief Donovan was there again, watching. At 9:00 a.m., Judge Beckett entered and prepared to start the day. But before he could, the courtroom doors opened and 3 U.S. Marshals walked in. The room went silent. "This is a federal courtroom," Beckett said, annoyed. "You can't just—" The lead marshal stepped forward. "Judge Harold Beckett, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and treason." Time seemed to stop. Beckett's face went from pale to red and back again. "What? This is insane. I am a federal judge." "You have the right to remain silent," the marshal said calmly, continuing to read him his rights as the other 2 marshals moved to either side of the bench. Agent Hale walked in, holding up his credentials. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. The warrant is legal and valid." "On what grounds?" Beckett's voice cracked. Hale held up a tablet. "We traced the encrypted command from Operation Iron Dagger. The key matches your Pentagon terminal from 2 years ago. You ordered a strike on American soldiers to secure a weapons contract. 4 men died, and you covered it up." The courtroom erupted. "You can't prove anything," Beckett yelled. "Those servers were wiped." "Yes," Hale said, his voice steady, "but you forgot about the backups." One of the marshals pulled out handcuffs. Beckett shrank back. "I am a federal judge, you will not." "Sir, we can do this the easy way or the hard way." The marshal's tone was firm. Beckett's hands trembled as they were cuffed behind his back. His wild eyes scanned the room and landed on Talia. "You," he breathed, understanding finally hitting him. "You did this." Talia stood and walked slowly down the aisle. She stopped 10 feet from the bench. "You called me a cautionary tale. Turns out you were right, just not how you thought." "You think you've won?" Beckett's voice was filled with panic. "They will tear you apart." "Let them," Talia said quietly. "I'll wear their judgment just like I wore yours, without fear." The Marshals led Beckett away. As he passed Talia, he whispered, "I was protecting American interests." "No," she replied, "you were protecting yourself." The courtroom was frozen. Then Colonel Mercer walked in. He stopped when he saw Talia. "They're coming for me next, aren't they?" Talia pulled out a small USB drive and held it up. "You signed the cover-up, Wade. You deleted my testimony. You lied under oath." She tossed the drive, and it landed at his feet. "I copied your logs before you erased them." Mercer stared at the drive. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "I thought I was protecting the Navy." "No, you were protecting your career." Two FBI agents came up behind Mercer. He nodded once to himself and let them lead him away. Talia watched him go, feeling only a vast, empty weariness. Donovan appeared beside her. "Are you all right, Commander?" "I'm not a commander anymore, Master Chief." "With all respect, ma'am, you'll always be a commander to me." He paused. "They're going to reinstate you, give you everything back." "Maybe," Talia said, walking toward the exit. "Or maybe they'll find a quiet way to get rid of me. Either way, the truth is out. That's all that matters." Outside, reporters swarmed her. Talia stopped at the top of the steps. "Justice isn't about revenge," she said, her voice clear and steady. "It's about accountability. The system that allowed this to happen is being reformed. That's what matters. I wore their contempt like armor because I knew the truth would outlast their lies, and it did." She walked down the steps and got into a waiting car. As it drove away, she saw Master Chief Donovan at the edge of the crowd. He gave her a slow, deliberate salute. She returned it. 3 hours later, Talia was back in the FBI conference room. "Walk us through your thinking," Hale said. "When my initial report disappeared," Talia began, "I knew two things. The person who ordered the strike had high-level access and they were watching me. I stopped making noise, but I didn't stop gathering proof." She spread a map on the table with 3 coordinates marked. "I copied the original logs to encrypted drives and buried them here. Then I waited for them to feel safe. Their confidence made them careless." "So you let them destroy you first?" Hale said. "I let them think they destroyed me. Silence isn't surrender, it's a strategy. I wore their insults like armor, and all the while, I was building a case that would stand up in court." "Why didn't you come to us sooner?" an agent asked. "Because the system had already failed me," Talia replied. "My commanding officer told me to let it go. My best friend testified against me. I had to work outside the system to make it work again." "And you went to court knowing you could lose everything." "I went in knowing I had already lost everything that mattered. My integrity, my trust. Getting my reputation back was never the goal. Making sure those 4 soldiers didn't die for nothing was the goal." The consequences came swiftly. Judge Beckett's cases were all put under review. Colonel Mercer was arrested and in a plea deal received a 12-year sentence. At his sentencing, he looked at Talia. "I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I will spend my life trying to atone for what I did." The Secretary of Defense held a press conference, apologizing to Talia and announcing reforms to protect whistleblowers. Talia watched from her small apartment. The words meant little, but the policy changes mattered. Her phone rang. It was Admiral Patricia Vance, the highest-ranking woman in naval special warfare. "The Secretary has authorized your immediate reinstatement," Vance said. "With full honors and a promotion to captain, we want you to oversee the new ethics program." "I need time to think," Talia said. 2 weeks ago, this same institution stripped me of my honor. I need to decide if I still believe in the uniform enough to put it back on." A week later, Talia visited Arlington National Cemetery. She knelt before the 4 graves of the soldiers who died in the attack. "I got them," she whispered, tears finally falling. "Justice came slow, but it came." She then drove to the Pentagon and met with Admiral Vance. "I'll need guarantees," Talia said. "Real authority, real independence, and real protection for whistleblowers." Vance slid a folder across the desk. "Already drafted and signed by the Secretary, everything you asked for." Talia scanned the documents. "When do I start?" Monday, Vance said, "Welcome back, Commander." A week later, in a quiet ceremony, the Medal of Honor was placed around Talia's neck once more. Back in her new office, her phone rang. It was a lieutenant colonel from Fort Bragg. "I have information about procurement fraud," he said. "Equipment is failing and soldiers are getting hurt. I tried to report it, but my reports keep disappearing. I heard what you did. I thought maybe you could help." Talia picked up a pen. "Tell me everything." The call lasted 40 minutes. As soon as it ended, she was already making a plan. The work was just beginning. She received an anonymous email. "Tower 4 sends regards." It was an old intelligence contact. Attached was an encrypted file with the names of 11 more officials tied to the corruption scandal. Talia smiled. The fight would be long, but for the first time in years, she felt hope. Justice isn't loud, it's patient, and it doesn't forget.